back here on the channel. My guy Jamal Murphy is here. Follow him at Blackatologist on social media. We are not talking about college basketball today, though, although we may do some draft coming up. We may, because this draft class is being shitted on by a lot of people. But we're talking about the Mets today, and we both watch this team a lot, and it's not looking great, Jamal. It's not looking great for this team right now. How bad is it in your estimation? Because they started off very terrible. Then they broke out of it and looked like they were going to go on a run. And it was like, oh, okay, look, the slow start didn't mean anything. And now they're sort of back to a few games under 500 at the time we're recording this. Not far from the wild card spot, the last wild card spot. But how does it look right now in your estimation?
I mean, it looks bad. Okay, like if you're watching the games, at least especially like the last week or so, it looks bad. Watching the Phillies just kill them. That's never a good thing. But we kind of, I mean, you had to expect this coming into the season. When you looked at that no-name pitching staff coming into the season, you were like, you had to be like, what? What are we doing here? Like, are we really just punting this season like some people suggested that Cohen was going to do? But that pitching staff has outpitched expectations, even though they're coming back down to earth now. So I do worry about that. Like, I worry about the pitching staff getting progressively worse as the season goes on. But as of right now, they're pitching okay. Uh, the offense has been atrocious. That's a problem. Maybe the offense can bounce back. So, and like you mentioned, the wild card, they're one game out of the wild card is May 16th. Okay, so yeah, it looks bad, but it's there's still some sliver of reason to hope. So it looks bad, but it's not that bad in reality.
Of the everyday players, only Harrison Bader is hitting above 260.
Yes, I mean, I don't know what to say about that.
JD Martinez is leading the team in hitting 295 average right now.
Hey, he's looked good.
Yeah, he has. Took a little bit to get there, but it doesn't look great. I actually, before I get into some Francisco Lindor numbers, because he's going to turn it around again at some point. Just I don't know how long they can wait. And then Pete Alonso's extension. You brought up a Steve Cohen tweet that I missed. And tell me what happened there, because this also goes into my next question about whether or not they should end up being sellers. But let's talk about this real quick.
Some fan account on Twitter, mentioned, hey, maybe it is time to blow this up. And Steve Cohen actually replied to the tweet and said, it's all in the future. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline. So a lot of people took that to mean, oh, he's blowing it up. He's talking about the trade deadline already. Like the season's over. Like he's already like, it's done. And then, some people, including myself, and I think you, are like, well, he might not be saying that. Maybe he's just saying, let's wait to see where we're at the trade deadline. It's all in the future. How we play in the future is included in that future. So he replied to the tweet and deleted the tweet 15 minutes later. So
That's the damning
I
part.
mean, yeah. So to me, it's kind of cool. It's like he's still a fan. Like he's responding to people on Twitter as a fan, and I'm like, oh shit, I can't do that. You know what I'm saying? And then taking it down.
Steve Cohen has had a very interesting tenure here. Very interesting tenure. Should they be sellers again at this point, or I think you play it out to the deadline, see where you're at. If you're about 500, I actually think there's a pathway to being buyers at the trade deadline. They did replenish the farm system last year. I actually liked how they went about making the trades, even though they ended up paying a lot of salary. Still, that was part of the agreement, but they have some legit prospects now. Right. And I wonder, like, what route should they take this year? So, one, what do you think they're going to do? What do you think they should do? Will be the number 2 question.
Well, your original question was, should they be sellers at the trade deadline? And I would say, let's say realistically, and what's likely to happen, I hate to say it, but yes, they probably will be, but it's too early to tell.
What does that entail, though? Because last year it was kind of obvious. All right, Scherzer, they were going to get off Verlander, but they're not gonna do it with Lindor. Does this include Pete Alonso, who still does not have an extension, and reportedly, according to Joel Sherman, declined an offer for an extension, which justifiably so. It wasn't an amazing offer. You can get more money in the open market, but like, how big are you thinking in terms of selling?
I mean, nothing would surprise me. With Cohen, he's very unpredictable. He's basically gonna. It sounds like he's gonna listen to what the baseball people will tell him to do, and he'll just go all in on what they say after the hires he made this year. I mean, you say no Lindor. I wouldn't be like if somebody came calling and Lindor's still struggling. He's batting 210 or 220, and like you said, he usually bounces back. He probably will, but other teams would know that too, right? So they know that this guy's, no matter what his numbers are right now, he's a legit player to add to, definitely a contender. You know, so I wouldn't want that to happen, but I'm just saying I wouldn't rule it out. Of course, Alonso's a possibility, also because um, he's basically having the same year he had last year, which in terms of a batting average being super low. I think he's batting like, I don't, low 200s for sure. I thought that might have been, I thought he maybe is a better hitter and better on base guy than he showed last year, but it's not really showing up so far this year. So the Mets kind of look smart, not extending him for big money, uh, already. So I mean, when I say sellers, it could be anybody to me, um, because if this team is, let's say they're 10 games under 500, which is a possibility,
Yeah.
then maybe you really blow it up and you just go all in on the farm system, all in on the young guys, and you're looking at, you're pushing it back even further in terms of 2 or 3 years down the line that you're trying to be a contender. But it is early. It's May 16th. They're one game out of the wild card right now, which is crazy to even be looking at. But so yeah, they have time. I mean, they could be playing better at that time. They could be playing the same and still be, in shouting distance of the wild card. So it's still up in the air. But something tells me, just looking at this team, like we just said, like they had pitchers we didn't expect much of in the first place. They've outperformed early season, but I'm scared they could just turn. They could be what we thought they were,
Yeah.
and by the time the trade deadline comes, we're terrible, and they have to blow it up.
No Francisco Alvarez, no Kodai Senga. Those are
True,
two major, major things.
true.
And Mauricio tore his ACL during the winter. Francisco Lindor batting 200, 651 OPS so far this year. Not great. Last year, he had 214. OPS was 726 by the time of June 20th. And then the rest of the year, he was 288 and his OPS was 874, had 17 home runs, 48 RBIs in the last 87 games of the season after having 14 and 50 in the first 73. So the home runs and RBIs weren't really an issue. And I thought he actually should have been an all-star last year, the way he turned it around and given the state of the shortstop position in the National League last year. In 2022, he was 228, 709 OPS by the same time, May 17th. Only 6 home runs, 22 RBIs, whereas 7 and 21 this year. So not great either way, but that was in 38 games, so not awful. The rest of the year, 283, 812 OPS, rest of season, 20 home runs, 85 RBIs. Like, this is what he does. And the
It
first
is.
year was all around bad, but it was actually worse. Even going into June, he wasn't even a 200 hitter. And then after that, he got to like the 250s for the rest of the year. So I think he's going to turn it around, but this is kind of a pattern that you can't really sustain if other guys aren't producing also. For someone who defends Lindor, because I think he's great. I think he's a great face of the team. He should have 1 or 2 gold gloves already with the
Yeah,
Mets.
tremendous fielder.
He should have 1 or 2 all-star appearances with the Mets, definitely at least one. With other guys not producing, it really magnifies the slow starts that he puts together.
Every year, that's the thing. Like, really, you're gonna have a slow start every year.
Yeah. It's
You
like, what are
know,
you doing in off season,
it's
bro?
like,
Like,
yeah, switch it up, switch it up. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you're doing, switch that up next year, okay? Please.
last thing, Pete Alonso.
Mm,
The contract that he supposedly rejected, according to Joel Sherman of the New York Post, colleague of mine, technically, 7 years, 158 million. Why would he have taken that offer? Like, obviously, like that's a
right,
number it's not a bad one, but he can get so much more money, like
right.
200-300 million maybe. Like he can get a lot more than that. What do you do with this situation? Like, you think they should sign him. It's looking increasingly like they may not. Do you try to get out ahead and move them if you're going to be sellers? Like, is this going to be the big piece? or do you just try to get the extension and continue to build around him, Lindor, and whoever else is on the team going forward?
I mean, I'm an Alonso fan. I've been an Alonso fan, especially as a Met fan. The fans love him. I think the organization has to at least like they can't trade him now, right? You can't. Maybe the trade deadline, if he is still struggling and his numbers look the same, and he's just not worth the money he's asking for, and some other team would probably give him, because of the home runs, maybe you trade him then. But I think the Mets look smart right now for pushing this out, waiting, and basically, beginning of the season, Cohen said, "Listen, I hope you have a year where I have to pay you $300 million. I hope you have the best year of your career, and I have to pay you $300 million." So far, it's not looking like that. Okay, so he's looking like he did last year. That's offensively, and defensively, he to me, it's almost like he's regressed a little bit. Average at best, not even that's probably a compliment, to tell you the truth. So, the more I watch, and I would say Mets fans in general are probably like this. The more you watch him, and he's not producing to the level that he did a couple years ago, um, we'll be more likely to understand the Mets going in another direction. So, I think the Mets are playing it smart right now. Um, I wouldn't overpay him if his numbers look the same, this year as they did last year. So it's a tough situation. Like I said, I'm an Alonso fan. I want him to turn it around, but you have to produce, and you have to hit for a higher average, and you have to get on base more, and you have to come through with runners in scoring position when we might need a single with a runner on second. We need more of that.
Scott Boras is his agent.
Yeah, well,
That's the
it's
other
not.
thing.
Yeah, it's not a good sign.
But I do still think if they went the route of moving him before, I, I would still lean to Steve Cohen figures it out, pays him, but then
Right.
like what we'll see about the rest of the roster. I do think you can get a good amount for him though, which
Hmm.
would be interesting, right? Like if this is his peak and you want to sell high, that's interesting. I just don't like. What are you selling to the fans there? Like you're just selling a rebuild, going young, and building around Francisco Lindor and a bunch of young prospects, which actually doesn't sound bad in theory, but it's just like Steve Cohen came here to win right away, and
That's true.
that hasn't happened yet.
But and that win right away narrative is already gone. He
That's true.
based on what he did last year, he paid the money, telling the fans I want to win this year, and then deadline gets rid of everybody, which I don't disagree with the way the season was going. But then you tell the fans, hey, we're not trying to win next year. We're trying to win in 2 years. So he's already pushed it back. And from the way this season is going, that wasn't a lie. What he was saying, they're obviously so far they're not trying to win this year. Okay, the only chance that we have of that is if they pick it up trade deadline and then they become buyers.
Hmm.
And as we've discussed, that doesn't seem like the likelihood right now.
So it's like if you're gonna punt, just punt. like at this point, just cut your losses if it's gonna be that bad. But who knows? Maybe they, win 20 games in June, and then all of a
Right.
sudden we're talking about them being buyers.
When does Alvarez come back? He's a big piece of this. I know he's struggling before he got hurt, but he's a big time prospect. I still believe in him big time. What happens at third base?
Same.
Beatty, Vientos has looked good in a couple games he's played. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe that's a real thing. McNeil has been terrible. What do you do with that? You know,
He's
our
one
outfield.
guy, like, you might sell him no matter what.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, exactly. Sell him for whatever. So bag of chips, whatever. And our outfield is terrible. Let's be honest. We knew this coming into the season too. When you
Yeah.
had Bader, Nimmo, and Marte, we knew that didn't look good, and it hasn't.
I took them over 82.5 wins, and then Kodai Senga got hurt immediately after. So this is all my fault.
But it's
Uh,
not over though. It's not over. There are
this-
4 games under. It's
yes.
May 16th.
Yeah. We'll
That's
see what
that's the
happens.
only positive right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, that's it. That's Jamal Murphy. Subscribe to the Bill Rhoden on Sports podcast, which he co-hosts, and also Up Next, which covers up and coming basketball prospects. And follow his work on Andscape. Where else? Andscape. You have
Landscape and Substack now. A
oh,
couple other
there.
random publications here or there. You never know.
Okay, I might need to ask you about Substack. I'm thinking about doing that myself.
Uh,
Later, guys. We will see you back here on the channel with some more content coming up soon.